of food so that the substance that it's cooking in is almost boiling, but it's not boiling yet, and that occurs over a certain period of time. And then the other cooking method I will be using is grilling, which is to cook on a metal frame over a heat or a fire. So a couple of ideas that I had to use, the techniques that I picked were grilled chicken, pasta, pestos, chilies, grilled fish, or chicken tortilla soup. But I ended up going with a grilled chicken with pasta and pesto sauce. For the cooking techniques I picked, simmering is a moist heat method, while grilling is a dry heat method. Some of the materials you'll need to cook this are a grill, a propane tank for the grill, a wooden spoon or a rubber scraper, a small saucepan, a stovetop, a food processor, a liquid measuring cup, dry measuring cups, a colander, and a large saucepan. So in terms of this dish's nutrients, you're going to get some water from that chicken and the basil, and you're also going to get a lot of those carbohydrates from your pasta. And the chicken also has a ton of protein in it. And in terms of fat, most of it comes from the chicken, but some comes from the pesto sauce as well, with that olive oil and such. In terms of minerals, nothing really has too many. Same for vitamins. The chicken is loaded with iron and other things like magnesium, calcium, B12, etc. In terms of nutritional benefits making this food, the chicken is very lean meat, which increases muscles, as well as containing vitamin B6, like I said before, reducing the risk of heart attacks, as well as many other health benefits. Also, in terms of this dish, you might want to go light on the pesto sauce, as it does have a large amount of fat, so it should be used in moderation. This dish also lacks very large amounts of dairy or fruits, so if you could add those into other parts of your diet for the day, that would be helpful. The recommended portion size for this dish is a 4-ounce piece of chicken, a 1/4 pound of pasta, and 1 tablespoon of pesto sauce. In terms of the My Plate requirements, you get your fruits mainly from the olive oil, which isn't a large amount. You get your grains from the pasta. Most of your protein comes from that grilled chicken. The basil leaves and garlic are your vegetables, and then with your dairy you get the Parmesan cheese. So right now it is far too cold to go outside and grill, so we'll be using a George Foreman for this video. But in terms of grilling safety, whenever you are using a grill, you always want to be outside and far away from your house, so that if anything happens, your house doesn't catch on fire. When you're turning it on, you're always going to check the gas, make sure the pipe doesn't have any leaks or anything. You could always use the soap method, which is you brush some dish soap on it, and if anything bubbles up, that's always a bad sign. And whenever you're turning it on, igniting any kind of flame, you're always going to want to stand far away from it. You're never going to want to lean over it when you're turning it on, because you could burn yourself, and that's never good. So whenever you're cleaning a grill, you're always going to want to take out the grates and scrub those down, remove any grime. You're going to want to use soap and water. You're always going to want to remove the grease trap, clean that out, because that could ignite a large fire. Any type of grime that's on the grates could cause flare-ups, which can burn the surface of your food that you're grilling, and that just doesn't taste good. One of the reasons you really want to make sure your chicken reaches that proper cooking temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit is that otherwise you can get salmonella, which is a disease that's born from raw chicken or eggs. And in some cases it can be deadly, so you always want to stay away from that. Make sure you clean your surfaces, cook that chicken thoroughly. Alright, so now I'm just going to go over all the ingredients that are included in this pesto sauce. So first we're going to have 2 cups of basil. I know this looks like a lot, but we have to cut all the stems. When you're picking produce, it's very important that you look for the color, the smell, and the texture. So when I was picking these, I always looked to make sure all the leaves were intact and that it smelled very fresh. Then we are going to add a half cup of extra virgin olive oil, a half cup of cheese, and 3 cloves of garlic. One of the ways I really like to add some more vegetables to this dish is by sauteing some and adding that to the pasta with the pesto. It really does complete the whole dish and make it more balanced. The way you saute is you get a small pan with a small amount of fat, whether that's butter or whatever, and you just put that in a pan, toss everything up, cook it for a little bit, and then it's good. Alright, so now we're going to measure out our olive oil, our basil, and then we're going to mince our garlic. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and wash our basil to make sure everything's all clean. And there we go. Alright, so now that our basil is clean, we are going to cut it. So there's a couple of things about cutting safety. First thing is you're always going to want to keep the blade down. And then you're going to want to grip it very tightly, and you can either put your finger on the top or on the side. One of the most important things is to have your knives sharp, and by doing that you can cut through it easily without applying as much pressure, and that way if you are to hit yourself or do anything that would harm you, you're not applying as much pressure through that. So here we're going to take some basil and just cut off the leaves. Alright, so now we're just going to measure out how much we have, see how much more we need to cut. Alright, so far we've made 1 cup, about. So we're just going to toss it in the food processor and then make another cup. Alright, so now I have the second cup of basil right here. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to chop up the first cup so that way we can fit the second cup in there. Alright, so as you see, the parts are getting stuck on the side of the wall, and you can stop it and use a rubber scraper to push those parts back in so it gets more chopped up. Alright, so now that our pesto is all chopped up, you're going to want to make sure you clean your cutting board. One of the reasons you always want to clean your cutting board is to prevent cross-contamination. And generally, whenever you cut anything, whether it's raw or vegetables or anything, you're always going to want to clean it so that way when you put something new on that same surface, it doesn't cross-contaminate, get any diseases or anything. Alright, so now that our surface is clean, now we're going to mince our garlic. Alright, so now that we have our garlic, we're going to go ahead and pour our olive oil. Alright, so now we're going to add our garlic and cheese to our basil. Alright, so now that we've done that, we're going to add a small portion of our olive oil, blend it up a little bit, and then we're going to keep adding small portions of it until we are out. Alright, and now that we've done that, all there is left to do is add that salt and pepper, and our pesto sauce is done. Alright, and now we're just going to leave that to cook, and we're going to go get started on our pasta.
Alright, so now we have our water, and that is on a medium-high heat. So we're just going to go ahead and cover that for a little bit so it can boil, and then once it's at a boil, that's when we'll add our spaghetti. Alright, so one of the biggest things when you're cooking on a stovetop is to prevent any type of fires or anything. So one of the most important things you should do is always stay there in front of your food. Next thing is oil limits. Whenever you're cooking with oil, you should always figure out its burning point, and whenever you're cooking with any type of item, you should always be right there, so that way you can monitor it, make sure nothing sets itself on fire by being too hot or anything. So that way, if there is a fire, you can quickly extinguish it. And speaking of, there's a couple ways to extinguish a fire. You can use baking soda. So the first thing you're going to do is you should always figure a way to take away the oxygen from it. One of the biggest ways is baking soda. So if I'm using a pot and there's a fire inside the pot, I'm always going to want to put the lid on it because it will remove the oxygen. So you're always going to remove the oxygen and then you're going to turn off the heat source. So say the contents was burning, I would put the lid on, then I would turn off the fire. Alright, and we're going to keep that at a medium low because we only want it to simmer. Alright, and that is our pesto pasta. Now you're just going to want to serve that grilled chicken that we made on the side of it, and that is your dish.